All roads lead to the divine. So whichever road that you cherish, whichever mantra that you cherish, together we can build a beautiful energy. Today I would like to talk about bitterness. The biggest spiritual impediment, which not only destroys our relationship within us, also around us and with the divine. Let us go back a few hundred years into the city of Goindwal. It was a beautiful early morning in the city of Goindwal. The sun was gently rising up in the heavens above, spreading its many shades of liquid gold over the horizon. Sitting in and with the congregation in the ambrosial hours known as Amrit Vela was Guru Amar Das Ji, the third reincarnation of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Guru Amar Das Ji had spent much time in the service, the seva of the second Guru Angad Ji. And when Guru Angad Dev Ji, the second reincarnation of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, left for the heavenly abode, the spiritual seat of Guru Nanak Dev Ji was passed on to Guru Amar Das Ji. This annoyed Baba Datu. Baba Datu was the son of Guru Angad Dev Ji. He felt that being the son of the Guru meant that he would be the natural successor. As the days went by, the more the Sangat went to pay their respects to Guru Amar Das Ji, the more angry Datu became. He simply could not accept that an ex-servant, Sevadar of his father, was today sitting on his father's spiritual seat. Despite many people advising Datu to accept his late Guru father's decision, Datu refuses to accept. The more the praises of Guru Amar Das Ji grew, the more Datu's anger grew. So he hatched up a plan that if he was to leave Goindwal, surely the Sangat will follow him. Datu moved away from Goindwal. He set himself up as the Guru and gave the instructions to those few who had chosen to follow him to go and spread in the Sangat that the true Guru was not Guru Amar Das. That being the son of Guru Angad Dev Ji, Sangat should acknowledge him as the true Guru. This did not happen. No one would come to see him. Instead, the opposite happened. The Sangat around Guru Amar Das Ji increased manyfold. Feeling hurt, isolated, frustrated, Datu's anger turned into bitterness. Unable to control his anger and full of bitterness, one morning he decided to take this spiritual seat back by force. He makes his way to Goindwal and he sees Guru Amar Das Ji sitting on the palki side, the seat, the throne, attending the Sangat. He storms in with a few of his followers and confronting the Guru, he shouts, "Once you were a servant of my father and now you steal his seat. How dare you?" He kicks the body of the frail Guru so hard that Guruji fell off his palki and onto the floor. Guruji was 72 years old. Guruji dusts himself, composes himself, and holding onto the foot of Datu that had kicked him off the palki, he looks at Datu and whilst massaging his feet, with a tear in his eyes, he said, "Datu, my master's son, your feet are young and tender. Over age, my bones have become hard and brittle. I hope my old bones did not hurt your tender feet." The Sangat was in tears. The Sangat was surprised at the humbleness of the Guru, the forgiving nature of the frail Guru. Datu was left speechless at what he was hearing. Guruji gets up, dusts himself, and walks away from the Sangat to his native village of Basrke. What is this bitterness that got Datu to kick the Guru, an old 72-year-old Guru, onto the floor? Bitterness are the remnants of those emotions that has not been dealt with, or we find difficult to deal with. Bitterness is a grudge arising from a myriad of situations. Bad friendships who have let you down. A feeling of abandonment. This could come when you're a child. An accumulation of negative experiences. A repetition of bad luck when life simply does not seem to go your way. An unexpected loss of a loved one, or simply lack of hope for a good future. Many scenarios in life that could lead us into bitterness. Deception, somebody who's deceived you, somebody that you depended upon, somebody you trusted. Any negative childhood experiences. So much can create an outcome, leading to undesirable traits in our behaviors, destroying the natural beauty of the divine heart, turning this heart from the once Garden of Eden into a flat, emotionless, dry, and barren desert. Bitterness starts as an emotion born from anger, resentfulness, jealousy, creating a chain reaction of cyclic negative thoughts and behaviors, taking us deep into the dark world of sinful emotions within. Bitterness is an emotional suicide, and those caught in the trap of bitterness, like a piece of paper in water, will slowly rot away deep in the innermost of our being. And there's a huge impact of bitterness. Bitterness comes at a very expensive, costly price. There will be an impact on our emotions, a profound impact upon our feelings, our moods, our health, our relationships, and deprive us from the divine blessings of our Father. Deprive us from joy and happiness. Bitterness will crush our spirit, will bring fear, worry, and anxiety within and around us. Bitterness will make our heart feel like heavy lead. And those who are caught in the emotion of bitterness will simply be wandering alone in an avalanche of poisonous thoughts and feelings. Understand, every emotion will bear its own harvest. Good emotions bearing good harvest. Bad emotions bearing bad and bitter harvest. However, the fruit of bitterness is the most unpleasant of all. Would any sensible person knowingly drink poison, one sip at a time? No. Yet for the many of us, we drink from this poisonous chalice of bitterness on a daily basis. Remember that life does not always flow in the way we wish it did. So accept it. We will have issues in many aspects of our life. Accept it. Relationships will come and go. Accept it. People can let us down. Accept it. And yes, we can be angry over many things. Accept it. Yes, we can be burnt in many different ways. Accept it. Why? For that is simply what we call the law of karma. However, we must at all cost avoid the bitterness trap. We must avoid the torture of angry and revengeful thoughts rolling around and around inside us. Yes, it's quite normal that I feel I've been wronged, that unfair and unjust things have happened in my life. But please do not allow that so that you can feel vindicated in holding on to the experiences of the past. As normal as it may be, we must be aware of the dangers of allowing bitterness to root in our hearts and minds. Bitterness is the most unhealthiest of emotions, a hurt that, if left unchecked, will incubate in our hearts and mind, consequently creating a devastation of the mind, body, and soul. Bitterness will extinguish that divine love that we have all inherited when we were born. That love which makes our life meaningful. Those who wish to pursue the path of spirituality must remember any spiritual act of devotion we perform will amount to nothing if we have a heart full of bitterness. Hirday kapt mukh gyani, झूठे कहाँ बलोवस पानी, काया मांजस कौन गना, ज्यों घट भीतर है मालना, लौकी 68 तीरथ नहाई, Gorapan to na jai, the scriptures of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Full of deception, and yet in their mouths are the words of wisdom. Guruji is talking about those spiritual people who talk wisdom, but their heart is full of deception. Why are you so false? Then Guruji tells us, you are simply wasting your time, washing your body every morning at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. For what? Your heart is still full of filth. And Guruji says, yes, you may wash your body in the 68 sacred shrines, but even then, your bitterness is not removed. Now we need to reflect upon ourselves as those who say that they are spiritualist. Are we in that situation? For if we are, then we need to do something about that pretty quick. So where do these emotions stem from that lead us to bitterness? Take a root. A root, for it to germinate, will require the association of soil and water. Similarly, our negative emotions arise from what we call the 3 gunas, the Triguna. What are the Triguna? The driving modes of our Maya, the 3 modes of our mind, the Rajguna, the Tamguna, and the Satguna. The driving force of every aspect of our lives, our emotions, our thoughts, our moods, and our actions. Now, these 3 modes of the mind, the Triguna, are part of our lower mind, not our higher mind. So, as a consequence, this is also known as the Maya mind. Guna in itself also means a rope. And so when we say Triguna, what we are saying is that rope of Rajguna, Tamguna, and Satguna, which is tying our soul to this body. So imagine if you can visualize the Triguna as a window. All that we are will be displayed through this window of the Triguna. If one had the ability to separate themselves from their body and look at themselves objectively, one will see the many different ways in which the Triguna respond and react to certain environments that we experience with our senses. In other words, the environment that we socialize ourselves with, we expose ourselves to, has a profound effect on the response of the Triguna. This response will create a fertile land within us for bitterness and other damaging emotions to take root. You lose a loved one. Suddenly, you lost your job. Reduction in income. Separation. In spiritual terms, you've lost your reputation. A reduction in social standing. You see a success of somebody else and it hurts you. There's a whole cocktail of experiences which, if we allow, will become deeply etched in the mind. They will leave a trace in the mind. And here, we may have forgotten, but Maya has not. And over time, they lie and ferment. And the longer they ferment, the more bitter they become. This process can last days, weeks, months, years, and sometimes from generation to generation. This anger, this revenge, that somebody wronged my father, the father has passed away, but I still need to do my revenge. Slowly, the bitterness flows out of the mind and begins to resonate in our thoughts and actions, creating an attitude of discontent, a spirit of unforgiveness, emotions that are self-destructive, sinful, and self-defeating, creating within us a chalice of poisoned emotions. And every time we take a sip from this poisoned chalice, we are slowly poisoning our soul and destroying our inner peace and harmony. And in some cases, leaving us pining for revenge. Bitterness can be subtle in nature or an uncontrolled beast within, manifesting from negative thoughts leading to words and attitudes, and to the other end of the spectrum of violence and wishing harm to someone. And for that person who becomes the victim of bitterness, bitterness is a malignant tumor that is slowly leading them to their mortality. Understand that the longer we allow this emotion to fester in the soul of our heart, the more love, peace, and joy it will devour. Bitterness will affect the energy structure within us. We have a beautifully balanced energy. We meditate to balance this energy. But bitterness will have a profound effect on this structure. This will trigger a sequence of emotional imbalances that eventually will become the root cause of our suffering. Not only destroying our mind, body, and soul, but also destroying our spiritual progression. Bitterness will color our conscience, create an impact on our unconscious mind, and therefore affecting our thoughts and actions without us even realizing. We get robbed by the dragon in its many forms, and we are fast asleep while the robber is robbing our house. Bitterness that springs in our heart will overshadow our deepest of divine desires. So what can we do to avoid bitterness? The answer to prevent bitterness is beautifully simple and yet so hard to execute. Ask the Bible. The Bible says, keep and guard your heart with all vigilance, for out of it flows the springs of life. Ask Buddha. Buddha said, conquer anger by non-anger, conquer evil by good. Ask Gurbani, Amrit Kaura Bikhya Miti Sakat Ki Bid Nano Diti. Guruji says to the bitter and cynical person, nectar, the sweet nectar, seems bitter and poison is sweet. Such is the condition of the faithless, bitter cynic, which I have seen with my own eyes. Many religions warn you of this bitterness. So how can we guard our heart? How can we conquer anger by non-anger? How can we see bitterness for what it is? Sangat, Seva, and Simran. You have heard me say this. Sangat, Seva, Simran, obey and pray. 5 things. Sangat, Seva, and Simran, obey and pray. Find the company of the preordained soul. And as we spend time with these preordained souls, as we meditate on the Shabd through their blessings, we will learn to let go and trust the divine, to let the divine deal with our issues. Please understand that any toxic waste that is poured onto the land will pollute the land, the soil, the vegetation, and the immediate surroundings. Similarly, toxic thoughts born from the dragon will pollute us from inside out, all that we are and all that we surround ourselves with. So in the Sangat of the preordained, we will learn to avoid being surrounded by bitter and toxic people and situations. Move away from any toxic situation, any toxic person. Remember, in most cases, we will not have the strength to deal with the toxic force of Maya, of bitterness. But be rest assured, in the Sangat of the preordained, with the blessings of the divine, we have a friend who does. In the company of the preordained, the seeds of anger, resentment, and revenge will be replaced by the seeds of humbleness, thankfulness, and forgiveness. In such divine company, over time, you will understand that only through forgiveness will you become healed from the poisonous thoughts of revenge, of bitterness. And if you are able to forgive, you will feel better physically, emotionally, and spiritually. You will heal yourself. Remember, if you cannot forgive, then have no expectation of forgiveness for yourself from the divine. And in lack of forgiveness, the force of Maya will create a stronger foothold within us. Maya will be looking for more dark opportunities to lead you astray from the divine. So, as hard as it is, we must learn to forgive, simply and only to set ourselves free. We may not have the strength to forgive, but please understand there is immense power in the Sangat, immense power in the Shabd, immense power in the Ardas, the prayer. We cannot control our karmic existences. This is why we are here for. This whole world, everything around us is no more than a karmic play. And in this karmic play, people will come, people will go. Events will happen that we may not be pleased with, or indeed, we may be very pleased with. However, remember, nothing is constant. All is an illusion. No experience, good or bad, will last. Therefore, in the company of such souls, our perspective of life will begin to change. We will begin to see the transient nature of all that we are connected with. We will begin to understand that all that is happening, that we cannot be accountable for the behavior of those around us. In essence, we will learn to become observers of the flow and not be the participants and drowning in the waves. Understand that life will flow in its own unique way, that we are no more than puppets in the drama of life held by the strings of karma. In the Sangat, in the company of the divine, we will be blessed with those spiritual tools of obeying and praying, to obey the divine wish and pray for those who have hurt us. The vital tools to weed out those thoughts that will deliver us from bitterness and give us the strength to be able to forgive. And remember, the sooner we can forgive, the less bitter we will become. There was a king. The king had a very arrogant and angry child. And thinking that at some point this prince is going to rule the kingdom, he called in a saint and asked the saint if he could teach him. The prince and the king and the saint went out for a walk in the gardens. And they came to a bush. The saint looked at the prince. He plucked a leaf and gave it to the prince to eat. The prince took a little bite, immediately spat it out with a very funny face. The saint looked at him. He goes, "What happened, son?" The prince in anger said, "This leaf was bitter. You gave me something. It was absolutely bitter." The saint replied, "But son, this was only a small plant. Can you imagine how much more bitter the leaf will become when this bush grows that much more?" So if we allow bitterness to ferment, anger to ferment, it will only become more strong, more powerful. So forgive quickly without hesitation before a small amount of bitterness turns into a huge amount of bitterness. We will learn that however much we may feel the right to respond, our response under the influence of bitterness will only lead us to sin, a behavior that will not be pleasing to the divine. We will learn that however much spiritual activities we may perform, that if we are unable to forgive, then these actions of piousness will amount to nothing. The once fertile soil of the land will harden, and there will be no place for the divine or divine virtues. Therefore, enter the Sangat, find good Sangat, meditate, relax in that Sangat, obey, pray, hand over your bitterness, your resentments, and any other contamination of the mind to the divine, and simply detox yourself in the Shabd, the Sangat, and the divine. God bless you. Thank you so much for your time.